Today's video, we're going to be checking out VATRER's brand spanking new 48 volt 100 amp hour server rack batteries. But before we do, I wanted to let you in on a little secret that only 76.6% of my viewers are not subscribed. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead and click that little subscribe button and the little dingy bell so you know whenever I upload the next video. With that out of the way, let's get to it. All right, so this is the brand spanking new VATRER. I like to say VATRER, but I'm sure it's called something different. There's actually quite a bit difference on this model versus the last model that I had. And that's gonna be the touchscreen on the front, along with new terminals with the M8 bolts versus those other janky things they used. I'm not sure why anybody still uses those, because you can literally strip them out by breathing on them. And then finally, all the communication stuff right down here. The only thing that they don't have on here, which I wish they would have, is the actual power button, because to turn it on, you flip the circuit breaker on. To me, I'm not really a fan of that. I would rather have a separate button so I could turn the screen on and see the information before I flip the actual circuit breaker. Oh, and one other thing is they have a little guide down here. Basically, that is a little tiny spot where you can put a Wi-Fi antenna. So this one is Bluetooth and Wi-Fi capable. And a lot of people ask why I always get two, and the main reason for that is if they have communication ports, I want to be able to make sure that the batteries can communicate together along with communicating with an inverter. I can't really do that with one battery. And for consistency, whenever we open it up, we want to make sure both of them look pretty much identical, along with the capacity testing. All right, let's take a closer look. We can just start by ripping the Band-Aid off. All right, I guess we will start with the front of the battery. So of course, 2 positives and 2 negatives, and they did switch over to the M8 bolt style terminals right here, which was a huge upgrade from those crappy old ones that they use where I could just strip them out really easy. So huge improvement for these right here. These screws do barely stick out a little bit, so just keep that in mind whenever you're putting your terminals on here. If you put them on upside down, I don't think you're going to hit those, but just keep an eye on those. Right below that, you're going to get a 125 amp circuit breaker. To the right of that, this little nub that we have right here is actually for your Wi-Fi antenna. So you get Bluetooth and Wi-Fi with this battery. And then to the right of that is another upgrade from their previous battery. You actually get some communication. So anyway, on and off LED, your reset, run, alarm, and state of charge indicators, your address dip switches, dry contacts, and then for your inverter, you're going to get your RS-45 and CAN. It also has RS-232 for computer access, I hope. And then finally for battery communications, your RS-45 in and out. Obviously, you're going to get 2 lifting handles, one on the right and one on the left. Oh, and don't let me forget, right down here, there is a screw hole for a ground screw. All right, next is going to be the screen that we have right here. You're going to have 100% state of charge, your total voltage, your capacity in amp hours, your current protection status, if there is one, and then your cell voltage right here, so lowest and highest. Right below that, we're going to get your cell temperatures, your charge MOSFET and discharge MOSFET, those are on or off. Next page is going to be which battery we're on. So if we were communicating, we could do that. We could select whatever battery we want. So right now we're just going to select number 1. Again, 100% state of charge. Everything's kind of the same, but you get more temperatures right here through the middle, and then you get all your cell voltages right down here. It is kind of tiny to read, but it is there. So we'll back out of that. And then next page is going to be the settings. So you can change your language, and then you can go from dark, light, and then ultra. That basically just lightens the screen as you go. And then you can change how long your screen is displayed in seconds. And then the last page is kind of like your password. So it is 666888. Hit OK, and then the check mark. And then we can change our protocols. And there is quite a few in here. GrowWatt, GoodWe, Sofar, Victron, Voltronic, LXP, which I'll probably put it on, Dai, Jinlong, SMA, VM22, SRNE, Invert, Surups, Must, oop, I missed one, Osway, Pylon, back to the beginning, and then there's a few down here as well. I'm just going to leave it on LXP when I'm done, but quite a few different options in here. which is pretty nice, honestly. We'll write that, check mark, whoop, and we'll write that. Boom, there we go. And then we will go back, and we're back to the home screen. So that's basically everything on the screen. On top of the battery, it's gonna say VATRER, and you get a couple of designs, your app connection, and then whenever you connect with Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, this is gonna be the number that you're looking for. We turn it to the right, just some more information. So it says VATRER, how much energy is in the battery, so 5,120 watt hours. You got your model number, your SKU number, app connection, again, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. If you need the app downloads, you can just scan this QR code right here, and then there's some do nots right down here. Flip it to the back side, absolutely nothing. The right side, absolutely nothing. And then boom, we're back to the front. All right, next is gonna be everything that comes with your battery. So starting on the left-hand side, you're gonna get a little bag of screws, which are not needed for the little side brackets here, because you actually just remove the screws that are on the side of the battery. I'll show you that in just a second. You're gonna get 2 negative and 2 positive battery terminal covers. You're gonna get a positive and negative battery cable, and these are 4 AWG. You're gonna get a ground wire right here, a small battery to battery communication wire. In the center, we have our little Wi-Fi antenna if we wanted to use those. And then right up here, you get 2 different sizes of M8 bolts for your terminals. And then finally, right over here, we have 4 smaller, I believe they're M6 bolts. And these would be if you are mounting the battery in a server rack. And then finally, we get our little warranty card right here. We are gonna get a surprisingly detailed and good manual, I'll just say. It's a lot better than most manuals that I've seen. And then finally, of course, is going to be the fan favorite, is all the stickers that you can plaster all over the place. And then the next family favorite is removing the top and taking a look inside. On the top, we got some padding with another plastic cover right here, which we will take off. All right, looking at the top down, we do have a little space on the back side. So if you set it down on the back side of the battery, you're not going to damage anything. Same for the sides. So you got plenty of room. You got some good bracing on here. All of the bus bars are laser welded, and they each have the hump in the center for expansion and contraction. We do have the little protection board going all the way around all 4 sides and in between all the cells, plus going across the center, so no cells are going to touch each other or short anything out or anything like that. All of the balance wires are nicely routed to wherever they need to go. All of them do have the little glue on them, and I can see a little paint pen mark, so it's all been like properly torque checked, or at least quality control checked, so I do like to see that. I'm seeing a couple of temperature sensors with a glob of that silicone glue. There's actually one right up here as well, and those are sitting right on top of the battery. All the batteries are properly labeled, all the balance wires, so that is good. All right, I don't know if it's gonna show up on camera very well, but on the most negative battery, the bus bar, it's kind of bent down a little bit. The positive is also bent down just a little bit on this end right here. So I don't know if that's from them torquing this or not, but whenever I try to move the lug, everything is nice and tight. All right, taking a look up here towards the BMS. Again, this is a JBD BMS, if I haven't mentioned that or not. I really can't see a whole lot in here because there's just not enough room to get in here. But what we can see is we're using 2 8 AWGs off the negative side. And then if we go over to the positive, we're using a single cable on this side. I tried peeling back this sheathing, but I can't actually get the size, but it looks very similar to the 4 AWG wire, the cable that comes with it, but it might be just a tad bit smaller. So it might be like maybe a 5 AWG wire coming off of there. And then those are gonna go down to the circuit breaker right down here, and then up to the positive terminal. They're just using a little jumper wire to go from one bus bar to the next, which I am not a fan of. I would much rather see an actual bus bar go across these terminals. Yeah, I'm just not a fan of that at all. And they're doing the same thing over here on the negative side. You can see it a little bit better now. Yeah, I am not a fan of that whatsoever. I am seeing that every single ribbon cable is not glued in or anything like that. So that would be something to improve upon. Basically every single one in here. It's almost like a wire's nest, but I don't know, I've seen worse. I know. And all of these wires are up against the BMS up here. If I let go, that's where they just kind of naturally lay. I would much rather see them away from the BMS because of heat and all that kind of stuff. Maybe if these were in some sort of protective sheathing, kind of like they have over here on the positive, I would much rather see this kind of improved. But again, that's just my opinion looking in here. I would much rather see all of the wires off of and away from the BMS. Overall, I mean, this isn't like super terrible. I would just like to see some of this cleaned up in here. I would like to see bus bars connecting the terminals here on the outside versus the wire. And then I'd also like to see all of the ribbon cables cleaned up away from the BMS and possibly everything glued in, because that's what most people are doing these days. It's kind of like a little rat's nest in here, but again, I have seen worse. Now, for the consistency check, I did open up the second battery and it looks basically the same. I mean, up here it's nice and neat, just everything down here is somewhat of a wire's rat's nest right here. And again, all of the wires are up against the BMS down there. So yeah. Not the worst I've seen, but not the best. And one last thing I forgot to mention in here, I did not see a fire extinguisher or fire arrestor. So that is another thing that I would like to see added to these batteries. Next thing I'm gonna attempt to do is scan one of the QR codes. Oh, there it goes, I got it real quick. All right, manufacturer is EVE Power 04Q. The model number is LF100L6C. 100 amp hour, 320 watt hours. Production date was 22/10/2025. Now I have had these for a couple of months, but I think whenever I got them, they probably would have been around 6 months old. Anyway, production city is Jingmen, and I don't know if we really need anything else after that. All right, we're gonna do the temperature testing. I'm just gonna use a can of this dust off. I've got a temperature sensor right up here, and I believe it is number 3. I got a little tiny charge on it. We're just gonna make sure it shuts off. All right, here we go. There we go. We got a charge under temperature, which is exactly what we want. Let me cool that off or warm it up. It did clear itself. Now we're gonna hit it with some heat. Boom, there we go. Charge over temperature, and it worked as advertised. And then we'll let that cool off a little bit and it should start charging again. Which I could probably just put it back down in its spot. There it goes. And then we're back to charging again. So charge, over temperature and under temperature worked as advertised. All right, next we're gonna work on the communication and make sure everything can parallel together, and then we'll hook it up to an inverter to make sure it can communicate correctly to the inverter. Because I've had all sorts of problems with other batteries, mainly the HumSync battery, and actually I think the Watt Cycle battery aren't communicating correctly. Anyway, on here, it tells you right up here, if you have your switches up, that's gonna be on, and then in the down position, that is off. Right down here for our master battery, or battery number 1, the first 3 switches are off, the 4th one is on. Battery 2 is going to be off, off, on, off. However, if I flip the page, this actually tells me something completely opposite. I know earlier I said this was a really good manual. Well, here's where I'm finding some issues. On battery 1, it says the first switch needs to be up and the next 3 are down, which is completely opposite of what the other page said. Or if we have them in the down position, all of them for every single battery, it'll be like automatic addressing. So we might be able to set them manually if you want to do that, or you can do automatic. So we're going to try both. We'll probably try this page first and see what happens. And then if this doesn't work, we'll switch to this page and see which one actually works. Okay, so in the instructions, it tells you to go from out to in on the RS45 in and out. So I'm just gonna say this is battery number 1. So we're gonna plug into the out. Battery 2 will go to the in port. We'll try this one first. Off, 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 on battery number 1, which I feel is incorrect. And then battery number 2, the 3rd switch is on. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll turn on I guess our master, we'll just turn them both on, see what happens. We should be able to go to the batteries. Okay, so right now it thinks this battery is number 4 and this one up here is number 8. So we're gonna go to the very next page. We'll do the first battery, first switch up, second battery, second switch up. Down, down, go this one up, second one up. Shut them off because it thinks there's 2 right here, and we'll just reset it. All right, so that one does work. So the first page is all incorrect. You're gonna wanna use this page, which is, there's no page numbers on here. So we have 1 and 2 on the master battery, and then on battery 2, it just shows us 2. So we should be able to click battery number 2, and it should give us the same cell readouts and all that kind of stuff. I know it's gonna be real small on your screen, but it is showing the exact same. So we can read battery number 2 on battery number 1. So now go back to here, and we can also select, obviously, battery number 1. Okay, so communication is working correctly. Now what we're gonna do is the automatic with all down, and I'll just shut them off, switches down, and that also works as well. So I've got battery 1 and 2 up here, and the same thing as before, just battery 2 down here. We should be able to read battery 2 on both of these, which we are showing the exact same thing. Let me go back out here, and I'll just switch to battery 1 to show that they are a little bit different. Boom, there we go. So communication does work. Again, just don't use that first page, use this page right here. Okay, next thing we'll do is we'll bring these over to the inverter and plug them in and make sure it communicates correctly. All right, got the batteries over here by the inverter, and I'll show you I've got both CAN and RS-45 on the LuxPower protocol. All right, over here on the EG4 6000 XP, I am on protocol 6, so we're showing 54.5 volts, 100% state of charge, which is correct. Oh, and we're showing 200 amp hour, which is also correct. So everything is showing up correctly on the inverter, which is fan-freaking-tastic. All right, while we're doing the capacity test, they also sent their 6-tier server rack, and I went ahead and put that together, and I don't know, I thought I was missing some pieces, but I am not. This is what it is right here. It's just 4 posts. Just 4 posts. Yeah. This is pretty much it, and you have to make sure you have these bottom rails down here installed in the correct orientation. Otherwise, I don't know how well you can see that and how flimsy this is. If you install these bottom 2 rails in the wrong orientation, your whole rack is going to like cave in on itself. It has the potential to do that because it's just these little bolts going through right here, and there's nothing on the top. It's just a little tiny piece of metal on the bottom, which I will show you. It is just this little piece on the bottom. So if this is flipped around on the top, it's basically going to bend right here and probably pull through that bolt and bend all this and potentially have your rack fall completely over. I mean, I don't know about this. The next thing is all the little screws that come with it. They're that big. Okay, so if you have your server rack in here, you're only gonna get maybe a thread or 2 in the inserted nut in here. I would not use these if I were you. I would definitely use the bolts that come with the battery because you have a lot more threads, and therefore you'll get a lot more thread protrusion, basically using the entire nut plate that's in here to hold your battery in. And then the next thing, if you haven't been able to figure it out yet, is there are no rails for your server rack battery to sit on. So you're only mounting it on these front 2 posts right here. There's nothing on the back. So that's why it's so flimsy, and I don't know if I would trust it. The next thing, let me get one of these mounted in and I'll just show you. All right, real quick, to put the server rack brackets on here so you can mount it to a server rack, you just take out these 3 screws, those 3 screws, and then put the bracket on and then put the screws back in. Okay, we are going to slide this into position, if we can. There we go. Boom. Okay, right off the bat, I don't know if you can see it very well, but there is the nut plate right there, so our holes do not line up. That's basically on top and bottom. So really, what you have to do in order to get that lined up, you're going to have to lift the battery up. So I'm just using these little wedges right here to stick underneath the battery. So you have to do that in order to get them high enough to line up. I'm going to put that on both sides to get them high enough and lined up. Boom, there we go. Okay, then we will put in our longer bolts here that came with the server rack battery. And then on this last one, I'll just show you for an example. If we were using the little tiny screw that came with it, you are only going to get just a couple of threads in there. Yeah, I would not use these little screws that come with it. You get like 2 threads worth in there, so make sure you use the longer bolts that came with the server rack battery. I'm going to remove these because we don't really need those in anymore. If we turn this to the back side of the battery is leaning down and resting on this bottom rail. So the battery is going at an angle like this. So if you can imagine, if you have 5 more batteries attached to this, that's going to be a crap ton of weight on these front mounting rails right here, and I'm not really sure what would happen. There's nothing on the top, you know, supporting that rail to that rail. There's no rails, there's no supports anywhere. I guess if you did want to use this rack, what I would do, well, first what I would do is I would attach something there across the top so the posts stay equally apart. And then on the back side, what I would do honestly is I would get some sort of something back here so you can raise the back of the battery up, preferably doing it over that lower rail with something, and leave that in there basically above those 2 rails so the battery sits in here nice and level. And then I would do the same thing for every battery on the way up. I would support it on the back side. Otherwise, you know, it's just gonna compound and get worse the higher you go up. And I'll show you whenever we get the other battery done with its capacity test. I will put that in here and I'll show you what it looks like without the little tiny supports in the back. Okay, this is with just 1 battery. I don't know about this. That just seems awfully loose in there. Anyway, let's put the second battery in. All right, this time I'm gonna get these in here pre-installed. You gonna help me, Malcolm? Oh, I might need more. These are a lot higher. Okay, so these ones are actually a lot higher. This could be a pain for people. Okay. I wonder if this will suck it in. Okay, so I'm gonna have to lift up the back side. Oops, I just broke that one. Okay, I'm gonna have to lift this up a little bit higher in the back so I can get my little guys in here. Hopefully that's high enough. Now, if I turn it to the side, they're going down, so that's gonna get worse the more batteries you have on it, because the more weight is gonna be on it. And I don't know if I trust it, unless you put little spacers here in the back so everything goes up equally. That's all I can say about that. And one other thing I'll mention real quick is the batteries do come with the ground wire, you know, from each battery, but there's no place on the rack to ground the rack. Just something to keep in mind with this rack. Okay, I was just doing some, you know, it rolls nice, but that's all I can say about this. The back, this back thing, since there's nothing holding it there, I mean, it's just, and who knows if these wheels will hold the weight. I can't actually say. At this time, I would not recommend this rack. Alrighty, now for the capacity test results. So capacity test on each one was actually done not at a 0.2C, it was at a 0.25C or 25 amps. I only did that because of time issues, and both batteries did the exact same at 102 amp hour or 5.2 kilowatt hour. I didn't do any extra balancing or anything like that. Basically, I just put the charger on it, and then whenever the BMS shut it off, that's where it ended, and then that's where I started my capacity test. And I did want to mention that these were pretty out of balance whenever they were fully charged. The delta for battery number 1 was 267 millivolts, which is pretty high. Battery number 2 was a little bit better at 193 millivolts. So I'm gonna need a couple really slow charges for these to become into balance. And that is one thing I do have to mention is since these have the JBD BMS inside, which I am a fan of, they have it locked out for the balancing options. So instead of balancer enabled, they have it set on, you guessed it, balance only when charging. And I tried my darndest to get it to go to the other option, and I could not get it. And that was through the Overkill Solar app or going through the RS-232 port and hooking it up to my computer and using their little software. I could not get it to change, so I'm not a fan of that part. Anyway, after that, I did a 100 amp capacity test on battery number 1, and on that I got 99 amp hour or 4.9 kilowatt hour. However, I did use a different inverter for that test, and the inverter shut off before the battery did. So I don't think that we would have had a problem getting 100 amp hour and probably no more. So the capacity test did pass. Alrighty, next is going to be the pros and cons, or likes and dislikes, and we'll go with the pros first, and these aren't really in any particular order. First one is going to be the new M8, not new, but new to VATRER, the new M8 terminals right here, which is a huge upgrade compared to the ones that they were using on the other server rack batteries. The other ones were garbage in my opinion, and you could strip them out super easy. So huge upgrade on those. And like I said, these little screws that are right here, they do kind of protrude just a little bit, but I don't think you'll have any problems of, you know, arcing anything out if you happen to flip over your battery cable. Flip them over and install them the opposite way. I don't think you're going to hit them, but just be aware of that, you know, if you install them the wrong way. So good upgrade on those. The next one is going to be, it comes with a nice touchscreen, and this one is actually a really nice screen. It gives you all the pertinent information that you would want to know, and you can change your inverter protocols on it. The next one is going to be battery and inverter communications, and that it actually works. That's kind of been my little problem lately with some other server rack batteries that I still haven't been able to figure out. So it's nice that these actually work. And if you use this rack here, the communication cable that they do give you does actually reach, which is also another problem with other server rack batteries. Next one is just like in the last ones, they're using good quality cells, and they're using the EVE cells in these, just like the last one. So that's good that they have some consistency there. Okay, cons or dislikes. First one is going to be there's no power on and off button. You only have the circuit breaker right here to turn it on and off. It would be nice if there was another external button that you could at least turn on the screen to get information and not send power to your terminals right here. Next one is the manual. I know earlier in the video I said they did a really good job in explaining things, and then whenever I was trying to figure out the communication stuff, I immediately ran into some issues, so they do have to do some changes in their manual. I mean, it is a pretty good manual, it just they need to update some stuff in there now. The next one is, it does come with a location for your ground wire, but it did not come with like a ground screw. Technically, you could use one of the little tiny screws, the little extra bag of screws that you get, but these aren't, they don't have like the flat shoulder. They have the tapered shoulder, which is more for like the screws that hold on the casing and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think these are the correct screws to use. So they need to include a ground lug or screw, a proper screw for that. Next part is going to be inside of the battery. So a good portion of the battery looked really, really good. And then the area up here where the BMS is, it's like a complete rat's nest. All the wires are kind of leaning up against the BMS. So if the BMS gets hot, I don't know, there could be a potential issue in there. You never know. The wires that connect the two terminals up here, you know, they're just using a little loop of wire. I would much rather see like a solid or flexible bus bar connecting those two. I mean, the wire does work, but personally I would just rather see a bus bar. And then the last thing on the inside is there's no fire extinguisher or fire arrestor. Okay, the next thing is, oh yeah, I just got done watching Will Prowse's video on these, and he mentioned that these were UL 1973 certified. And I looked on their website, and the only thing that I could see on there was just a little mention that said that they are compliant with the UL 1973 certifications. Keyword was compliant. It doesn't actually say they're certified. And then also in one of the pictures, they showed like the ETL or one of the little logos in there. And then, you know, a couple of like, it makes it look like they are certified. So I wasn't quite sure, because if you look up the word compliant, it doesn't mean it's actually certified. So I went on the Intertech website and I did do a search for VATRER. And I did actually see, there's two listings in there, but one of them was listed for this exact battery. The exact model number, LM512100, is listed there.
I know. I checked online.
I don't know. You think they would want to like plaster that all over, at least on their website, but it's not really mentioned anywhere other than it shows it in a picture, and then it just says compliant. So yeah, they are actually UL 1973 certified, which is good, a step in the right direction. Anyway, next thing is gonna be the pro cons or likes, dislikes about the server rack. Now, and the little tiny wrench that came with it, which is supposed to be for the casters down here, doesn't even fit. So a big no on the server rack. All right, last thing is gonna be the price, at least at the time of this video. And for one server rack battery, it is $869.99 with free shipping. But wait, there's more. If you wanna get this awesome rack right here, you're gonna have to buy at least 4 server rack batteries. All right, overall it is a pretty good battery, so if you are interested, I'm gonna have links down in the description. If anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns, make sure you put those down in the comment section. And finally, if this video was helpful in any way possible, make sure you like that smash button on your way out, and I will see you on the next. You gotta say it louder because you don't have a mic.
Hello! Hello!
These are my little helpers over here watching me put this thing together.
How shiny does my hair look?
It looks super shiny, actually. You want to see it? Come over here and look. You won't be able to see it.
And I was like, how's that work?